Hi, welcome back. We're here with Jennifer Moss Logan from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Welcome to our show. Thanks for coming on and joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Of course. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do at the museum as an educator?
Sure. So at Denver Museum of Nature and Science, I am one of the educator coordinators, and it's a pretty exciting job. What I get to do is create the kind of programming that visitors and students come to see when they come to the museum. So if you've visited the museum and you've gone to Expedition Health and you've checked out a dissection, or you've gone into Space Odyssey and you've seen an astronaut on the surface of Mars, that's the kind of programming that I get to work on and create. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Oh, so a lot of creating.
Yeah.
Oh, very neat. That sounds really cool.
So are you technically like a museum curator? Do you follow curation for education? Is that kind of your role?
So what's really cool about a museum is there are a lot of different positions you can be, and being a curator is one of them. That's where you are charged with doing the science, with doing research, with having that sort of realm. And then there are those who look after our collections, that's our collections management. Mm-hmm. And then on the public side of things are the educational team. And so that is where I am. So the exciting thing about working at a museum also is that all of those groups come together and work together regularly to create exhibitions such as the one which we just opened, which is Mummies, New Secrets from the Tombs. So that's pretty exciting.
So appropriate.
Yeah.
Good timing for Halloween.
So very much. You're all well dressed for it, absolutely.
Right. Put a lot of work into this.
Yeah. Oh, I got my mask. It's here. It just won't stay on, that's all. I tried.
I'm the superhero I wanted to be when I was a kid, but the cape didn't grow with, with my body.
Well, tell us about the mummy exhibit.
Yeah, absolutely. So this exhibition, Mummies, New Secrets from the Tombs, is about Peruvian mummies and about Egyptian mummies.
Okay. What's the difference? Other than the location.
Yeah, I was going to say, one from Peru,
Absolutely.
But I'm sure there are a lot more differences than the location. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, indeed. And this is what visitors come to see. So many of them come for the Egyptian mummies because they've heard about that. Right. They come in and they're learning also about the Peruvian. So Peruvian mummies are actually some of the oldest in the world. They're amongst the oldest in the world, going back some 7,000 years. And they're really very interesting. Unlike the Egyptians, who would mummify, so we all have a picture in our mind of what an Egyptian mummy looks like, sort of a straight board and wrapped. In ancient Peru, there were different versions from different cultures, but one of the ones that we highlight in particular in the exhibition, the Peruvians would put the body into a fetal position and bundle it up with cloth and with beautiful textiles, and then put them into these underground spaces along with all sorts of things that they might need. So for example, there's beer and corn and a few goodies from life and things related to what they did in their lifetime. Because in ancient Peru, the belief was that the dead were sort of amongst you. They didn't go to some far off space or be in some, afterlife. They were with you. And so they had everything they needed with them, and you would go visit them and take them out and have them amongst you for certain celebrations. So it's a really different culture from what we think about with the Egyptians.
That is so interesting. Well, Egyptians, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was more of gifts and jewels and lavish things they were buried with, rather than just their everyday materials. Is that correct?
In ancient, you're very close, and there are many things like that we find in ancient Egyptian tombs. In Egyptian culture, in ancient culture, the idea was that you needed to have your body with you in the afterlife. And so it was all about how you can preserve the body.
I see. So Peruvian mummies are not as well preserved.
They are. This is awesome. You are absolutely getting the kinds of things as you go in, as our visitors get as they go into the exhibition.
Okay.
So the Peruvian mummies, the very ancient ones, actually did go through an extensive process. It was really very interesting. They would take off the skin and tan the skin and take the flesh off the bones and put stuffing back in there and put them back together with a beautiful mask. That was the most ancient of the mummies that we have, and that process is why we still have them. Later on, a different process was used for preservation, and really the bodies were just wrapped And they were in such a dry climate. That's what Peru has in common with Egypt, is that dry climate along these spaces where we find these Peruvian mummies along the coast of Peru. And so just the conditions would mummify them inside of those bundles.
Was that purposeful? Do we know if it was purposeful or not, I guess?
Yes.
For preservation, or it just happened to work out that way because of the climate?
And this is a great question that anthropologists ask. And what we believe is the case is that these beliefs probably came from, in the ancient past, bodies that were left out in these conditions would naturally mummify. And so the ancient peoples would see these, and they perhaps developed their belief systems around that. And then in the case of the Peruvians, they began to shift and change how they would honor that process, if you like. And in ancient Egypt, where they likewise saw these bodies naturally mummifying, they really got into this system of really doing things to the body to encourage that preservation. And those are some of the things that I brought to show you today.
Is the hook to take out the brains? Is that right?
Yes,
Through the
indeed.
nose?
Who can resist a great brain hook? And the reason is, if you're going to mummify a body the way the ancient Egyptians did, you need to take out the gooey parts. And the gooey parts include the brain, so inside the dead body, in the face of, so here's the dead body, and you would put this inside up through the nose and sort of swirl that around and pull the
like
brains
spaghetti.
out.
Oh.
Yes, a little like spaghetti, a little bit like swirling it around maybe like a milkshake, and it's a really interesting process out through the nose. Very appropriate for Halloween.
Sounds like a terrible job.
And then your organs also had to come out because they're also a gooey bit, and the organs would be preserved and go into canopic jars like this, and they would be looked after by one of the sons of Horus. So I brought the canopic jar where we would store the lungs, and so Happy here, the baboon, looks after the lungs.
So were all the organs stored in kind of different containers then?
So there were 4 organs that they took out specifically, and each of those 4 organs was put into a canopic jar. Now that's during a very particular part of mummification history. Other times, other things were done, different processes. And so visitors coming to the museum are going to have a chance to not only see incredible artifacts, beautiful giant sarcophagi, the coffins, and learn about that. They'll also be able to learn about how the process of mummification changed through time in Egypt and in Peru.
Was mummification, was everybody mummified back then, or was it, I know like probably you were mummified better if you were very wealthy, but did they try to like if I was mummified, did they just like throw some toilet paper around me and throw me outside in the dry air?
Well, as we like to say, in ancient Egypt, you got what you paid for, you hoped.
Okay.
Now, this is another great place where we can compare these two cultures. In ancient Peru, in those cultures, it was a much more democratic system. The young and the old, would seem to be across the different sort of social elements, were all put into these mummy bundles and mummified. And in fact, those spaces where they were stored would have members of the same family in them.
Oh.
So.
Was mummification still going on in Peru when the Spanish made contact with the Inca, or was it ancient history even at that point?
It was actually going on at the time, and in fact, when the Spaniards came to Peru, how those two cultures came together, it's really interesting to look at how practices today, the Catholic practices today of ancient Peru, reflect some of those ideas from the past. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that the ancient Peruvians would take out the mummy bundles and move them through the streets on festivals, for example. Well, if you go to Peru today and you watch the Catholic celebrations, you'll see the figures that relate to Catholicism now, Mary and so forth, in these figure forms being brought through the streets in a similar way perhaps to the way they used to bring the relatives, the dead relatives who they were honoring. So really interesting to look at all of that.
But by comparison, right, the Egyptian mummification took place in the past and sort of ended before what you could call the modern era in any capacity.
Right.
Like by the year 1500, it's still going on in Peru, but at this point it's no longer happening in Egypt. Is that correct?
So it is very true. They have very different timelines, and sort of the looking back in the more recent past of Egypt, we don't have that same tradition of mummification. But we did have mummification all the way through the Greeks and through the Romans, and so also what you see in the exhibition is you see this change through time. You see the absolute earliest pre-dynastic, some 5,500-year-old earliest Egyptian mummies, and then you see how those changed, and the incredible coffins and the beautiful hieroglyphs and the tombs and so forth. So they're great. It's a great exhibition, and we hope that people will come and see it.
That sounds really
I'm definitely going to have to come see it.
You have some great questions.
I've always been so interested in it. I think that's really cool. What else does the museum have to offer?
We have so many things. Also happening right now, we have a great additional temporary exhibition, and that is extreme mammals. So extreme mammals is free with admission, and when visitors come in, when they first walk into that exhibition, it's very cool. There is this gigantic creature that's like an 18-foot rhinoceros-like creature, and that's the first thing you see as you walk in. And there are all sorts of extreme mammals, the biggest, the longest, the shortest, the smallest, the sharpest, the most claws, all those kinds of things, and some great Colorado connections with our Extreme Colorado, and a cart where they can see some of our most extreme mammals right here from Colorado.
very cool.
Yeah, so that's another great thing happening.
Gosh, you know so much about all different subjects when it comes to that. Do you get to interact with guests of the museum and explain to them all the information that you know?
So we have just we're so incredibly fortunate here at Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We have an amazing program of folks, of volunteers and staff who help to bring the museum to life every day. I do indeed get to be one of them, and this means that when our visitors, our families, or students come to the museum, they are not only going to see these great exhibitions, they're also going to meet people, have touchable objects such as the kinds of things you see here, be able to interact with visitors, ask questions, bring their homework questions, and be able to dive in. So it's a really, really interactive space that we have. And so, for example, we talked about astronaut on the surface of Mars. When your students come and they visit Space Odyssey, one of the things that they can do is they can talk to a future astronaut on Mars and imagine what it would be like to be standing there in the future, looking out at someone doing that kind of work, and ask them anything from, so do you miss your family, to what do you eat, to what are those rocks? So it's a great experience for visitors, yeah.
Oh, that's really cool, that interactive piece of it.
Yeah, actually, I went to the robot exhibit over the summer.
Great.
Did you help kind of set that up, or that was really interactive, a really cool exhibit, yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's a really fun one. We have just an ever-revolving door of temporary exhibitions. And in the case of mummies, it's actually only going to be here for a short time, as is Extreme Mammals. In the case of mummies, we are only one of only 5 places that will be getting that exhibition. So a lot of times this is sort of your only chance to see it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And how long is that going to be out until?
So that will be here until the first part of February, till February 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Halloween, what better time to do it right around Halloween? Come on, right?
And a lot of families choose to come over the holidays and bring their families. It's a great thing, especially with the 2 temporary exhibitions at once. And then, of course, there's also IMAX and Planetarium and the whole rest of the museum. So it's a great place to bring your family.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Yeah. What about for students and teachers and education? If we wanted to take field trips there, what kinds of things do you offer?
Oh, we have great field trip opportunities. So we have Field Trip Adventures, which is where students and their teachers can come together and they can combine an exhibition visit with some special sort of custom programs, some special programs where their students can dive in a little deeper and have some extra excitement added to their trip, and it just makes the whole field trip go that much more smoothly. And that, like so many of our things, is really easily accessed on our website, where you can go in and you can find out what's going for education and for school students. So. Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. I'm really excited. I think I'm going to take my students in the spring, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
That's great. That's great. So for our general visitors, we also have some additional things that are coming up. We have our SCFD Community Free Days. These are days that are supported by the Scientific Cultural Facilities District Fund. And on these days, there are 12 days a year, we invite everyone to come in. So we open up our doors and invite our community to come on in for free. And so we have one of those coming up in November, and then one in December, and then of course next year as well. And we also have a free night coming up.
Oh.
So that's unusual. So that's for Denver Arts Week. We'll be doing Night at the Museums. And so on Saturday, November 5th, we'll also be opening up our doors as part of a citywide effort. And so that's going to be another great night to come down and check out the museum.
What is the Night at the Museum?
Night at the Museums is the kickoff for Denver Arts Week, where so there are all sorts of things happening in relation to Denver Arts Week, and again, you can go online to find out about that. And amongst it, all sorts of museums open up their doors, and there are events, or there are fun things going on. The museums are open, there are shuttles that go between them, so it's a great chance for families that may not have a chance to go during the day to come and check it out.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. So cool.
And that's also free admission. So.
Oh my gosh. So can you see, is the mummy exhibit included in all of that?
So the Mummies exhibition will be open that night, and so that becomes a great night to see it. There is a small charge for that, and again, you can go online to find out about that. Cool. That would be a great night to come and see the exhibition. And and Extreme Mammals, which is free with admission, is also open.
Awesome.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, we do have to, we're running out of time a little bit. So, but I could ask you questions forever because it's so interesting. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing everything that you have to share about the museum. And you guys go online and go on their website and check out all of these awesome things that the Denver Museum of Nature and Science has to offer. That being said, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll see you very shortly.